Nice.
Anyways.
Yeah, so we can see that, yeah, the bottom part, the shadow, it went lower than you wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
But we have such a light amount of paint on the table. We're going to repaint it, and eventually we'll get it to the shape that we want.
Okay.
But the purpose of doing, you know, something like this, so I'm going to pin me instead of you. The purpose of doing a very light color initial coat like we did is to give us a chance to decide if we like the drawing. Like I find my pear is leaning very much towards there, and it seems like it would fall over. So because it's very, very thinly painted, it's easy for me to change the shape. Maybe I'll bring it a little bit more, you know, here, so that it actually won't look like it's going to fall over. And like, see this one here at the bottom, it bled.
Oh yeah, it did the same thing.
It did the same thing. Excuse me. But because it's so faint, I could decide to change the shadow if I wanted to. And also, if I wanted to, I could change the angle of this or the height of this. So the overall purpose of doing an initial coat is to decide, okay, do we like these colors? Do we want to stay with these colors, or do we want to change? And do we want to change any of the shapes that we have? So as I'm looking at this, I'm a little unsure about the combination of the green with the yellow. It's very, very close right now in terms of the tone. And it's a little harder to do a contrast between these two. So I'm wondering if we should maybe change and put the background with our red and the table with the yellow. We could do that.
What if we made the background orange?
I'm sorry?
What if we made the background orange? That wouldn't really help that much.
We could make the background orange. Now, the complementary color to the pear, which is red, green, is red.
Yeah.
But when we put our red onto this yellow, which we did Indian yellow, it will actually make the background kind of a red-orange. So it will probably be something like what you're suggesting, which is pretty good.
Right.
And then once we have done this with the background, then we can think about if we're going to leave this table this color, or if we're going to change it. Maybe we'll put it like an Indian yellow, and on top of the red. Mind you, it's so washed out it won't show anymore.
Okay.
So, but before we proceed, how about if we look at your pear and the shape of your overall pear, and we can decide if, you know, do you like the shape? Do you want to keep this shape?
I do want to keep the shape.
I like this shape too.
I worked for quite a while on this one. The other one I hated, and I didn't even want to fix it.
Oh, okay.
So I started over.
Yes.
And I really looked at the pictures because and I said, I'm going for the right shape here. So
okay.
I was much happier with this one.
Yeah, I like this one very much. Right now, it doesn't look like it's really sitting on the table, but mine doesn't look like it's sitting on the table either. It's just a question of, you know, when we rework the shadow and all of that. But I really like the shape that you gave it.
Would you have changed the height of the table and the angle?
Nope. No. I think what you have there, it works. It works really well, and it's in line. Like one side is in line with the other. So, and I really like the shape of that pear, much more so than my pear. But I will work on my pear and try to make it at least as good as yours.
I liked that this angle was different.
Yes.
You know, that it made it interesting.
Exactly, exactly. And it's like there is this the wider side on the right-hand side.
Yes.
That's and it's got angles, so it's very, very interesting. All right.
Yeah, I was happy.
So we're going to paint this. And so our first step, we've decided to change the background. So we're going to prepare some red and put a thin layer of red over the Indian yellow background.
Is it going to be watery or no?
Watery, yes.
Okay.
And this way we will probably get a very warm red, close to or like red orange, because there's already an Indian yellow color
Sure.
on
Okay.
here. But it should be interesting.
So I better mix some paint.
Yes.
I was just thinking.
Yes. So to make, to change the background to our red color, we're going to prepare a watery area, watery red. Oops, my red is all, it's all kicked up. So just need to do a little puddle of watery red, like so. I should move my chair. That it would be better. And once I have this watery, you know what, I think I need to lower my easel. All right, so once I have mixed them watery red, then I go over my background in, because I want to change a little bit the shape of my pear, I will do that at the same time. So I go over the red, the yellow, the Indian yellow that we had for the background, with a very watery red mix with nothing else. And at the same time, I'm gonna take the time to change.
Yours is much darker.
Oh,
Much. So I guess I didn't use enough pigment.
okay. It's okay that it's not all the same for everybody.
I'm going to do it again with more pigment though,
You can.
because it's really barely a little pink over the red, yellow.
So one thing that's important, and you asked a question, is to go over the shadow area also as well.
Yes.
With this new color, because the shadow area is, it's actually the wall behind, and even though it's in the shadow, it is the same color of the wall. It's just a darker version. All right, so in this process, what I have done is I have created a new shape for my pear. See?
Oh yeah.
And I've now created this nice darker background, which is kind of like a red orange color, because I had the Indian yellow under and I have the red over it, and it gives a nice color. I think our pear is going to punch out a lot more with this background than before. So now what I'm going to do when I paint the pear is now I'm going to use this new shape that I have for the pear, because I didn't like this small little area.
Right. You just did that freestyle.
I did, yeah. We should actually be looking at the photo, but for now, for the background, we don't really need the photo a whole lot. However, I remember that in this corner here, it was actually a little darker, but I don't want to go over that too much because it's going to lift. So I'm going to let this background dry, and then we will be able to give a better shape to the background afterwards.
Contrast, I think that would be nice.
Yes. So on the table, we're going to mix some green, and we're going to prepare some red as well, watery both. And we're just going to put a little teeny little bit of this green into the red. It will remain red, but a little nuance of red, not the pure red. with its complement. Now, too much green into the red will give you a brown table.
Right,
That's not what we're aiming for.
no,
However, when we repaint the shadow area, then we will add more of the green into the red. But for now, we're just mixing, so we need to mix the green and we need to mix the red or prepare the red. And then once we have the two colors, then we can take a little red, put it aside, actually a good amount of red, put it aside, and take a little teeny little bit of green and put it in this red. So let's do
Okay.
this preparation. No, I think oh, yeah, I still have some. All right, so I'm preparing some green. So you can prepare the green with, you can use a brush to do this. If you have a palette knife, you can use a palette knife to do this. Do you have a brush?
I don't have a palette knife. I do have an extra brush here.
Okay, so you can use a smaller brush to prepare your colors. So I'm just going to use this flat brush to do this and to prepare my colors. So I know that to make my green, I use a lot of yellow and just a teeny little bit of my blue. And we're aiming for the green that we have on our color wheel. So we're aiming for this green here. This is the color that we're looking for.
A medium.
Yeah, everybody has their own color here. This is pretty opaque. It's not even my palette, it's someone else's who left it here, but I don't have the one that I created. So it's not a lime green and it's not a teal, but it's a green. So starting with a little blue in my yellow, not too much. Then if it's not dark enough, then I can add more blue. But if I start with too much blue, it's going to go dark too quickly. And then instead of continuing with this little patch of color that I'm mixing, I would almost have to start again from scratch, because once it's too dark, it just needs an enormous amount of yellow to make it right.
Yeah, that's happened to me many times.
Yes. All right, so I'm making this watery mix of this nice green. And the color that I came up with, I'll put it like just to show you to the screen. So it's kind of like still a pretty light green. I think I could add a little bit more blue to it. So I'm adding a little bit more blue to make it a little darker. I don't want to make it too dark right now. In subsequent layers, maybe I'll go darker, but first, for starters, I always try to leave it light. So, and I'm making it very watery. So darken my green a little bit more. So now I have this. See, that's nice. That's a nice green, this one here. And I'm going to stay with this. And right next to it, I'm mixing my red, very watery. So this is my red, just a plain alizarin crimson, which with a lot of water, it looks pink. All right, so I have my red here. And when you're ready, let me know.
Ready? I'm ready.
So in this red here, I'm going to take just a little bit of this green, just a little bit. See, very little. Oops.
I better wash my brush.
Yeah, I didn't wash my brush.
Oh, you used your red brush.
I used my red brush. Yeah.
All right.
So I put it in here. Now, as I put it in here, I find that it's not enough of a difference. So just to show you. So this is the red. So I have a very little difference right now. So I want to put just a little bit more green, because see, compared to this, it's not enough of a difference. So I'm using a little bit more of my green. I mix it in my red, and now I'm getting this. So I don't know if you can see this one here.
Yeah, peachy.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's a little bit more interesting. So I like this tone. Everybody's tone will be different. And using this tone, Now I'm gonna paint my table. This is a very watery version of my color. And I'm gonna paint my table, including the shadow that I might lose my shadow, but we have the photo and we can paint the shadow. So I'm going here and I'm painting this very watery. Oops. Better if I show you. Very watery. Here we go. And now I'm getting this. Make sure that you don't leave a space between the pear and the table. And using even more green, then, I could indicate where the shadow was.
Oh, mine's so watery. Whoa.
But the shadow is probably something that I'm gonna work on once we see the photo again to make sure that I'm doing this right. So now I have this. So the background and the table are very close in color now. However, they frame this pear very well, except for this, of course, because I reshaped my pear. So once we start repainting the pear, that's when I'm gonna fix this.
So did you do the added green for your shadow? Yes.
I did, but just a little bit, and I've barely indicated it here, because the shadow, the shape of the shadow, we should look at the photo to make sure that we are doing the shape of the shadow correctly. And same here, I didn't redo the shadow on the wall yet. All right, now it's time to rework this pear. And I hope you can see it well enough on your little screen there, Janet.
Oh yeah, see fine.
So this pear, so I'm going to ask these questions. Where do you say is the darkest dark?
Well, you have a lot of shade on the left along the edge and then on the right bottom. But I would say the left.
That is correct. That's what I see too. And why is it that the area that is supposedly the area that's the shaded area, because that's the side where we see the shadow.
Yes.
So why is it that this area is more of a grayish dark, light gray or like lilac color almost?
Is that because of the wall?
Yes, it's reflected light from the wall or from other elements that are in that room. So that's why. So I'm going to make it a little bit bigger too, just so we can look at it even closer. So see this area here?
Yes.
This whole area is even seeing this area here, we're losing the edge of the pear, because the pear in this area is the same tone as the background. Look at this. Isn't that interesting? You see this?
Yes, when I was drawing it, I had to zoom in to actually find that edge.
Yeah.
To see what shape it was.
Right. So when we're painting it, I recommend that we try and represent what we see. And therefore, we will probably lose this edge and not have an edge there, because we don't have an edge on the photo.
Right.
And it's called a lost edge. And when, next time you go to the museum and look at all those nice still lifes, you can probably be able to see and appreciate that. Oh, look at that. There's a lost edge here too. So here, this is where the lost edge is. But what's interesting when we do a close up like this is the area on the left is a lot darker than the area on the right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Although the area on the right is the area that is per se in the shade, although
Right.
it comes from the front. So that's why the area on the left is also kind of dark. But there is a lot of reflected light. on here. So, you know, it's important to show this reflected light. And when we look at the bottom here, so let's look at the shadow on the table. In this area here, is the shadow the darkest or is the pear the darkest? In this area on the right-hand side.
The pear looks darker.
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree. Now let's look here in the front.
Yeah, the table's darker.
Much darker, and it's obvious. And then when we go to the left, completely to the left, it's very obvious that the pear is a lot darker than the table. Where the table is completely lit up. But somewhere here between the front part and the back part, there's a switch, because the pear becomes darker than the table in the back, even though the table is in the shadow. And then when we come towards the front, somewhere it switches where the table becomes darker than the pear, because the pear becomes in full light. So it's quite interesting, isn't it?
Yes.
So observing the object before painting it's a good idea. Now that
And figuring out where the light's coming from.
Yes. But in fact, when we say where's the darkest dark, it's actually on the stem.
I know. I was going to say that at first, and I said,
Yeah.
that's not what she means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we want to be a smart ass, that's what we're gonna
Yeah,
say.
the stem is black.
I
The
see it
tip,
I see it kind of purple. But let's see, let's look at the stem. Look at the stem.
Oh, there's a lot of light on it too.
Yeah, there's some speckle of lights, and you know, the color could very easily be a very dark magenta or purple. So, yeah. But look at this. Look at where the stem touches the pear.
Oh, yeah, it's off center.
Yes. And it's got some light here on either side of it. So that's all very interesting to notice. All righty then. So now we're back to how it looks. I'm just going to make it as big as I can on our screen. Okay. So can you see the full
Yes.
pear?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So where are we at with this pear? Well, we have an initial coat of paint on the pear that is pretty much the same tone and the same light green all the way around. Excuse me. So now is the time. I just got to make sure that I'm still recording. No, yes. And now's the time to start giving some shape to our pear. And to do that, so if we want, we could do a darker green and a lighter green. So that would give us kind of like, you know, a tone for the darker area and a tone for the lighter area. But we could also decide to have some green ready and some red ready. And then in the darker area, in the shadowy area, put some red into the green. And it will make it a much more harmonious and interesting shadow area. And so we could do that on either side because we see dark on either side.
Okay.
And then afterwards, we'll come back with some reflected light touches on the right-hand side. So because our initial drawing was so light, we'll need to paint the whole pear again. But as we paint the whole pear, and in order to try and avoid having sharp edges, as you're painting the pear, then you can gradually add a little bit more red when you get towards the edges on either side.
Okay.
Rather than saying, okay, we're going to paint this portion this color, this other portion this color, with a very straight, very sharp edge in between. So the important thing is to have sufficient color ready before you start. So
This is
prepare,
not thin.
you can, you can do, yeah, it's probably better to do it thicker now because, well, in my case anyway, I have to cover up all the changes that I want to make. So now would be a good time to do, to mix the green a little bit thicker than before.
It's
So,
the same, it's the same darker green, isn't it?
yes. So I'm going to stop the share just to show and record how I am going to mix my colors. Alrighty then. I'm gonna unpin you for this. Just so I'm bigger. Okay,
And do we,
so I use a
in terms
lot of
of,
yellow.
are we doing, is this plain red or the mixture?
Right now we're preparing one green and one red, two separate
Okay.
things.
Okay.
So I'm starting with the green. So I'm using a lot of green and mixing it with what I had before. I'm not putting too much, I'm not putting a lot of water in this. So I'm trying to come up with the nice green that I had before. Or the green that you see on your color wheel is the right green. I'm running out of paint. All right. Oops. Okay, a little bit more blue. So now I have this beautiful green here. Not sure that I have enough actually. I should make some more because we're going to paint the whole pear. So we want to make sure we don't run out of paint in the mix in the middle of painting the pear. So I'm just gonna squeeze out some more yellow to make even more green. And adding a little blue to my green. So this is not enough blue, a little bit more blue. And now I'm almost ready with my green. There. So now I have this beautiful green to show you to the camera. That is thicker than before. I have this beautiful green here that is thicker than before.
That is beautiful.
Yep, that is ready. And to prepare my red, well, it's just red out of the tube with just a little water in it. So this is my red that I'm preparing. I'm putting it aside from, you know, the original because I will probably contaminate this with green. So that's why I'm not leaving it over here. I'm just putting it aside, just adding a little water to it, not too much, but a little water. And this is ready to go. So now I have my green brush that I'm putting back in the water, and I have my red brush that I'm putting back in the water, and my green brush is ready to go.
Okay, I'm ready.
However, this green brush is too small to paint this pear. So I'm going to actually put it in the water and take a bigger one. If you only have a small one, that's fine. But since I have bigger brushes, I like to use a bigger brush like this to paint this, or maybe one like this. That's good. That's a filbert. So now I have this pear that I want to, you know, reshape. So as I'm painting in this area, here, I will probably add a little bit of white to my grain because this line will not disappear easily.
Right.
But I try to avoid as much as I can to avoid adding this, the white if I can. So using my green, a lot of green on my brush, see, a lot of green. Then actually. All right, so now we're trying to do this pear. And using a lot of paint on my brush. So looking at the pear, I have a lot of paint on my brush, and I'm gonna paint my pear. Now this green is pretty dark. It's darker than I actually wanted, but I am trying to cover this new pear, and I'm making sure as I'm reshaping my pear that I'm painting all the way to the edge. So I don't want to leave a space between the wall and the pear. So I even went a little bit on the wall to make sure that I cover it. And so I'm tempted to go with, you know, an original layer of my green on the overall pear. And on, you know, the whole thing, even on this side. And then I still have the same color everywhere, the same green. I'm making sure that I'm painting all the way to the bottom, oops, to the bottom of the pear, down here, over here, to the side, and going over that line that I have. I want that line eventually to disappear. The line that was, you know, the contour. Now that I have at least one layer of green over everything, and if I show it to you, see this is still showing, but it's eventually it will disappear.
Yeah, but it's more disguised.
It's more disguised. Now I'm going to take some yellow, pure yellow, and I'm going to put it over here where I have a lighter version of my pear. So pure yellow, and this whole area is just a lighter area.
Oh, so you mix some yellow plain?
Yeah, I just take the yellow and I put it right on my canvas on top of the green. And it's just lightening my green just a little bit.
Are you blending? You're blending.
I'm blending, but I'm blending directly on to my pear. Do you see? So it's blending, and you know, I'm looking at the photo to see where I see more yellow. So I'm taking yellow directly on my brush and putting it right here on top of the green, and it's blending on the canvas. Now that I've done that, so we can see now, see it's a little bit more yellowish here, this area. It doesn't give me a yellow color, but it gives a slightly lighter version of my green in this area. Now in this area, I have more of a shadow, so I'm going to paint with more of the green over here, and same on this side. So now taking more of my green on my brush, see a lot of green on my brush, and now I'm going to paint the darker area. Right, wet on wet. So now this is allowing me to do soft edges. More of my green over here as well. This area. And this is very dark.
Are you wiping your brush in between at all?
No, there's no need, because it's the same color again and again and again.
But I find that the yellow is lost in the green when I just mix it, blend it in with it.
The yellow is lost. What do you mean by that?
It still looks green. Yours looks more yellow.
because I put even more paint.
More paint, okay.
Yes, yes. Yeah, when I add paint yellow, see, I put this much yellow on my brush.
Oh, you've got fun.
And then I add it on here. Well, this is even more than I did before. But see, when I add it on here, then it really looks lighter, but
Oh,
still green. See, this is what happens when you do this. So don't be afraid. And then when I add more green to paint, you know, the other side where it's shadowy, then, you know, I can mix it all up. But I make sure that I have a lot of green on my brush. See, it's quite a bit.
for the sides, yeah.
The sides. And make sure that you go all the way on that edge that you had created. We had originally done an edge drawing. So now I have this pear, and see, I've almost lost this line that I had here. See, I had a line here and I've almost lost it, and I haven't used white yet. But now our pear is starting to shape a little bit. And this is because I painted so thick, it's still wet. And using more of my green. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a little red to this. So this is my green over here, and my brush is full of green. See, it's full of. So now I'm gonna use a little bit of my red and mix it with the green that's on my brush. It's gonna give me something like this.
Oh, that's much darker.
Yeah. And this is what I'm gonna use on the side, like over here. Because that's where it's darker. See, it already looks darker on the screen.
When you just, before that, when you did your dark green, did you just go along the very edge?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. See, I had a very dark line on the contour, and now see, it's disappearing. That's what you want. You don't want to keep this line. Now it's so thick that it's like my brush is sliding around. So now I'm using, again, I'm putting a lot of paint on my brush, and now I'm dipping this into my red here. It's almost giving me like a brown. See, now it's giving me a mix of the two. And I have to decide where I'm going to put this. So I have this area here where it's darker. Not so much at the bottom, but over here, this is all darker. Now it is very, it's very slippery because it's so thick now. We're gonna have to let it dry before we can continue.
I have to, Claire, I'm sorry.
I said we're gonna have to let it dry.
I have to step out for a second.
Oh, okay.
Gotta make paint.
So this is what I have so far.
Oh, that's really pretty.
So what do you notice about this background? Let's talk about the wall.
Gray.
Gray. Is it uniform gray?
No, no, darker on the left upper.
A lot darker on the left, upper and even in the middle.
Lower. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it goes from very dark on the left to lighter on the right. And if you look at the shadow on the wall, is it as dark as that gray on the left?
No.
Not even. Yeah. I mean, we can, if we want, make it as dark, but it's not even as dark. And if we talk about, the actual gray that we see on the wall, what kind of a gray do you think that we see on the left? Is it like a green gray, a red gray, a blue gray? What do you think?
I would say more on the purple blue spectrum.
Yes. So because it's more on the purple blue spectrum, we can easily say it's more of a cool gray, like a cooler kind of color. But then on the right-hand side, the wall becomes very light. If we say this is still gray, but very lighter gray, is it still like on a blue purple, or do you see like another kind of tinge there?
Yeah, I almost see a pink, but I don't know if that's my vision.
Yeah, I also see kind of a pinch, almost orangey color.
Peach color, yeah.
Yes. So it's a warmer color. So that's what's happening with this background. It goes from a darker, cooler gray on the left, and it goes towards the right to a warmer and more orangey, peachy, lighter color. And it's important when painting white that you use the right white. When you go and you want to remodel your kitchen or your dining room, and you go to the hardware store and you say, oh, I'd like to buy white paint, and they ask you what kind of white, and then they show you all these swatches, like there's 100 of them, and then you have to choose which one. You want to choose the right one. So when painting, it's the same thing. It's important that to represent the right tone, but also the right kind of color that's within the color. So if it's gray, well, there's like 100 or maybe more of grays. And if it's white, then what white is it? So observation is key. And that's why we're taking the time to do this observation time now. So now that we have said this, what about the table?
Yeah, so you're not talking about the titanium, you're talking about what we add to it.
Right. How do we make the gray? This was a question in a previous slide. How do we make the gray? Well, it all depends on what kind of gray it is that we want to make. But we established, well, it's kind of like a purplish blue gray. So we'll probably use a purple or a blue or an indigo to make the gray. And the white that we see there on the right-hand side on the wall, well, it's kind of a peachy color. So we're probably going to start with some kind of orange or Indian yellow, and go from there to make this white. Even though, so we'll mix the orange or the peach color, and then we'll add a lot of white to it, and that'll be our white. And so what about the table? So what's happening there?
That's much cooler. Well, again, it's the same. It's just on the left, it's cool, and on the right, it's warmer.
Yes, but it is the nuances of the right versus left is a lot less than what we see on the wall. But you are correct. It's a little cooler on the left and a little warmer on the right, although the nuance is very, very little. What about the shadow area of the pear on the table? Let me go
It's
like
darker.
it's darker. Is it a dark blue? Is it a dark green? Is it a dark yellow? What is it? What do you see?
I'm still seeing that peachy. Well, maybe that's just the light under the pear.
No,
It
you're
gives you-
correct. Your instinct is correct. I also see kind of a peachy color that has more, a little bit more magenta in that peach color. But it is kind of like a warm tone that we see in the shadow, especially on the right-hand side. In front, like at the bottom, right below the pear, it's more of a very dark, maybe kind of a purpley color, purplish.
Yeah.
So this is a long discussion, but it's to say that, when you paint the shadow of an object, or when you paint the surface on which the object is, or the wall behind, or even when we're drawing a portrait, same thing. Observing what you see will help decide what color to use. Alrighty then. So now we're ready. And we did some interpretation. We decided that we were going to do a wall that is kind of like a red-orange wall, but we can still, in this red-orange, we can still, indicate more of a cooler tone on the left and a warmer tone on the right. And see how the shadow that's on the wall is very diffused. And so therefore, when doing the shadow on the wall, keeping the edge of the shadow very soft will help read it more like a shadow.
Which is a different ball game with acrylics.
Yeah, but it can still be done. All right, so to paint our background, we are going to prepare. I think we've pretty much established that the background is going to be like a red-orange, or do you want to do an orange?
No, I like the red-orange is nice.
Me too. I like that too. So we're going to mix a red-orange on our palette. And excuse me. And once we have mixed that, then we're going to separate it in half, like in 3 parts. So you want to prepare a lot of red-orange, because we're going to prepare it and then separate it in 3 parts. And one part will mix a cool color into it. One part will leave it as is, and one part will add the white into it. So now is the time to prepare the red-orange.
I better find my white. I did not take that out. And
So
what am I?
I haven't made my red-orange. This is what I'm doing now. So I've used all of the red that I have, and I put a little yellow in it. I want to make enough because we're going to paint the whole background. So all right, so I have my, and yes, once you have your red-orange, divide it in 3. So this is the color that I get.
Oh, yours is much darker.
But that's
Of course,
okay.
my color wheel, it's my color wheel.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll just make
Made a light one.
Yeah. Well, I didn't put any water in it. And so
Are you going to?
not a whole lot. Maybe I'll dip it once. That'll be enough.
Okay.
And so I'm going to separate this in 3. So that's why you have to have a lot. So one section here, and then one section over here, and the rest over here. Oh, I was missing some yellow. So you want to have enough So when you paint, you're not running out of paint. I mean, eventually, when you're used to painting, then it doesn't matter if you run out, you just make some more on the spot. But to start with, you don't want to be.
I tend to spread out too much.
Yeah. So I said make it, 3 equal parts, but actually one part could be just a teeny little bit because we're going to add a lot of white into it.
Okay.
So now I need white. Out of white on my palette. So now what we're going to do is we're going to try to represent, the 3 parts of our background wall. So the left part is a cool color. So we want to add to this part, I want to add a little bit of a cool color, and we said a purplish blue. And just to make it easy on ourselves, we're just going to add a little bit of blue to this. So I'm dipping a little bit in my blue, and I'm adding this to this color. So now it's giving me color like this. See this color right here?
Yes.
So
More bright.
it's just a little cooler, a little darker than my red orange. And I'm going to use a clean brush, small clean brush. Okay, so my brush is clean. Now I'm going to add a whole lot of white to this other part of my red orange. And with this, it's giving me very light color, like so. See right here?
Oh, wow. Did you dilute that a lot? No?
No, I did not add water. I only added white because I only had a little bit of my red orange. Now, if yours is a little darker, that's okay. So I have my 3 colors. I have my very light color. It almost gives me like a peach color. And then I have my red orange here. So this is red orange mixed with a lot of white. This is my original red orange. And this is my red orange mixed with a little bit of blue. And now I'm ready to paint. We are now going to paint the background behind the pear, going from a cool color, a cooler red orange here, going to the red orange, a regular red orange, going towards a lighter red orange, which is more like the light peach color that we have here.
Yeah.
So I have my brush where I mixed a little bit of blue in my red orange.
Mm-hmm.
So I load up this brush with all of this color. And I'm gonna start here up in the corner, and I'm gonna put this color from the corner down, going down up until I have no more of this color. Now I ran out of this color.
Are you at the table?
I'm sorry?
Oh, you went all the way to the table.
To the table, yeah. Well, I had enough to do that. But now I've run out of this color. And so without cleaning my brush, I'm taking the red orange that I have on my palette. And now I'm using this.
And you're blending.
Yeah, and I'm blending it together. And now I'm going to clean my brush. Not completely, but to remove the dark that I had. And then I'm going to continue painting this with just a red orange.
I'm sorry, what did you just do? Clean your brush?
Yeah, I cleaned my brush a little bit because I didn't want to have this dark anymore as I'm coming around. And now that I'm all the way to over here, now I'm going to dip into the peach color, which is the red orange mixed with white. Paint this side. I'm gonna lose my shadow, but that's okay, as I paint this. It's okay. I could redo the shadow after. And got to make sure that. So now we have got ourselves something interesting. I want to make sure that my table is lined up correctly. I've got to make sure this is lined up correctly. Yes, this is good. All right, so I went a little bit over my pear, which is not a bad idea. I'm just gonna take a clean brush and clean it up a little bit, but see, I went a little bit over my pear here.
Yes.
I'm just gonna go like this a little bit just to mix it up. It's okay because we get the reflected light there. So eventually we'll add this lilac color anyway in our shadow.
You're using a dry brush.
Yeah, it's an almost dry brush. So now I have this. So I have going from kind of somewhat of a cooler red orange towards my regular red orange towards the peach color that I have on this side. And on purpose, I didn't do the shadow yet. And I went over it, and then we'll redo the shadow afterwards once this is dry. Now it's starting to become very interesting.
I'm losing the shape of my pear a little bit.
Okay, well, you can refine.
Only because I'm going over.
Yeah. Yeah, and
not much, but a little bit.
Mm. Yeah, well, once you get used to, painting and drawing, so it's not so bad if you lose the shape of an object or a pear, because you are confident enough that you can redraw it and refine it again.
Right.
So to paint the table now, we had decided, do you remember what colors we used for the table? We used two complementary colors. So we had decided that
red.
We had a table that was red, and we decided to put a little bit
green in it.
Of the green in it.
Yeah.
And so therefore, we're going to do that again. So the first thing we need to do is prepare some green and prepare some red. Now this time we're going to paint thicker. So prepare a good amount of your red and a pretty good amount of the green, although we will only use a little bit of the green to mix in the table and a little bit more for where the shadow is. And so preparing the green. So I'm
contrast.
Preparing my green with a lot of yellow and a little blue. That's my first step. My little tester. It's all used up. Oh, this is watercolor. Okay. All right, so I prepared my green, beautiful green that I have. So that's ready to go. And the red, as you said, Janet, is very dark. So I'm going to use some red, and I'm going to add some water to this red because I don't want it to be too dark. Now the other option is we could add a little white to it, but So mine is getting a little watery. And so therefore, it's still quite thick, as you can see on my little test strip. So if I were to dip it some more, it would be a little bit more watery. Gives me this. Still very dark. So what shall we do? Shall we add a little white to this? So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to try without white and show you what it gives us.
Okay.
Now, if you like what we are getting, then you can try too. If it's too dark, then I will remove that and then we'll try with dark. So in my red that I have here, I'm putting it right here like this, quite watery. And in this red, I'm going to add a little bit of my green. So a little bit of green.
Was that for your shadow?
No, this is for the actual table. We did put a little bit of green. See, a little bit.
Okay. That's right. I forgot about that.
I'm mixing it in this red.
Okay.
So it's giving me a color that is like this. It's just a little different from my red. See?
Yes.
Maybe I need a little bit more of the green to really make it different.
Oh, I like that. That's that. Yeah.
It's a nice color, not too much green, just a little bit of the green. Using this, I'm going to paint my table. So it's almost the same as the background there, but I'm just going to paint it, the whole thing, and I'm making sure that I'm touching my pear with this and making sure that I put, I keep having a little bit of this green. Oops. And just like this.
I like that.
And now here on this side, I want to make sure that I have the right angle to my table, like this. So now we're getting this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little white to this mix because I want to make sure that that we see where the table is. So here, just going to go like this. So this way it goes from lighter to this color down here. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side, although it's not as light. So voila. And down here, what I'm going to do now is I'm going back to my red and adding even more of the green. Down here in the corner, I'm going to put this a little light, a little darker of a color.
On the left corner?
Yeah, because a table, it'll look a little bit, it'll indicate a little bit better the sense of the depth. If it's darker here and lighter here, going towards darker down here. So now I have
That, so that was more green.
Down here, I added a little bit more green. Up here, I added a little white. So it gives me this. I want to make sure this line. I want to make sure this line is good. Yes, it is. So it gives me this, and I still have to paint the shadow, which we haven't done yet. See how I went over a little bit at the bottom of the pear, just to make sure there's no white spot in between my pear and my table. with the time that we have left, we are going to go back and paint the pear and try and finish it. And this time, now that we gave the chance to the pear to dry, we can paint on top. The whole pear is, it's completely dried up, in my case anyway. And if yours isn't dry yet, then you should wait until it's dry, or you can use a hair dryer to dry it, and so you're ready to paint back on it. And so now's the time. I mean, we're going to do a final final coat. But if I were painting this pear on my own, I would probably do another 2 or 3 coats on top, because it's fun to build the layers. Sometimes you don't necessarily repaint the whole area, and you just paint the areas that you want. But right now, since we're pressed for time, we're just gonna do this. So to paint the pear some more, I still have some green right here that I mixed on my palette. So this green here that I have, I still have a lot of it. So I'm going to use this to paint my pear. And my brush is actually all messed up. Just going to clean it a little bit. I'm going to use this small brush since it's full of this nice green that I want. And as I'm doing this, now it's time to really shape it up. And so therefore, on the areas where I really want it to be dark, so over here, I'm putting a little bit of green on the side here, like this, and I'm adding a little red to it, to this area. And then I'm going to paint this. Oops, yes, good, okay. And I'm gonna make this, I actually need even more red. And my green was not quite dark enough, so I'm adding a little blue to it. And I'm putting this right here. This is where my darkest dark will be. See how I'm not necessarily painting with the tip of the brush? Now what's happening is I'm creating some sort of a sharp edge. So I don't want that. So I'm cleaning my brush just on the paper towel without necessarily dipping it in the water. And I'm going to use some of my pure green without the red in it and paint right next to it. And now it's blending. So now we're getting the edge that's quite dark, getting towards like a mid color. And then it goes to the lighter area that I haven't repainted. I don't think I'm going to repaint it right now because it still looks good. And so up here, I'm going to continue up at the very top of the pear. It's almost like a red color. So I'm putting almost all red and just a tiny little bit of green in it. And I'm putting this area here because it's such a dark area of the pear. So it's almost like a red color. And then it abruptly, or almost abruptly, changes to green. So I'm cleaning my brush and I'm using this green with a little red in it. And I'm coming down here with this. A little bit more red, this area here. Yeah, that's good. And now I'm going to clean my brush in the water, wipe it on the paper towel, use the green that is only green, and go here to make this a much lighter, much smoother edge there. And I always have the option of using the pure yellow and coming here, and putting this pure yellow right here in the part of the pear that has the most light, like so. Now what's happening with the pear is at some point it goes like this and then it goes towards us like this.
True.
This area, I used a pure, I mean, not the pure, but I used the green that I made without any red in it. And I'm going to put that right here like this. So it's going to give the illusion that it's changing plane just a little bit like this. And then go back with the yellow over here. Yeah. Now, what we need to do is we now need to come down here with the darker area. So I'm going to clean my brush. And I still have green, so I'm still using it. So I put some of this dark green over here. I'm putting a little bit of red in it, with giving me this color here. And using this, I'm going to paint the other side of the pear that's also in the shadow. So this side here. Now this shadow area is a lot wider than the one on the left. So it's all of this. And it actually is a lot darker. So I'm going to use some of the pure red to put in this section. Like so. But we had seen some sort of a grayish color here. So we're going to add that. So I've added the red to this side here. I've added the red. See all of this red, pure red on top of the green. And now using the peach color that we have from the background, it's actually a purplish color, but we're going to use this peach color. I think it's going to work well. And the peach was our red orange mix made from using the alizarin crimson with a little bit of yellow and a little bit of white in it, and using the dry brush. So I've made my color and I'm drying this brush on my paper towel, and I'm going to put some of it here. Because this is the reflected light. So it's kind of an interesting concept. And there's quite a bit here. Now the acrylic will dry lighter darker than the actual color. So it's different from watercolor. Watercolor will always dry lighter than when it's wet. For the acrylic, it's the reverse. So now that I've added this lighter color here, now I'm going back with some green on top. See, there's just too much of it now, so I'm going to go back with some green on top. So it's giving me something like this. Kind of interesting. There's also some reflected light down here. So now I'm going to add a little white to some green that I put aside. Because down at the bottom, it seems like our reflected light is in the green. And so using a color like this, it's this color, using this color here, which
Yes.
is, you know, I've added a little bit of white to my green. I'm going to put some reflected light down here, and actually it has to be even more white because there's so much reflected light down here. So this is dry brush. So it gives me this. See this reflected light?
At the base, yes.
Yeah. And now it's time to paint the shadow. Do you need a moment to finish this part?
You know what? I'm way behind you, so just keep going. I'm gonna watch the recording.
Okay. So now it's time to repaint all of our shadows. And this shadow on the table will be, so we use the color of the table, which is red with a little green in it. And to make it the shadow color, I'm just going to add even more green into my red. And the same thing here on the wall. So it's a peach color with a little white in it. So the complementary color to peach is it's basically green. So I'm going to put a little green in it and do the shadow here. So out of yellow. I apologize, we're running a little late, a little over. This is our last class, so might as well make it count, right?
It goes by so fast.
It does, it does. So I'm making my green with a lot of yellow, a little, and a little blue. Always try to start with just a little blue and then add more blue if it's not dark enough. So the color of my green that I made is this one. So that's ready to put into my red when I need it to paint this table. But right now I'm just going to paint the shadow of the table. So the shadow of the pear on the table. So I used the red and I put some of this green into the red. Actually, it requires quite a bit of it, as I realize now. So it's giving me this color. It's a nice, very deep red. I'm going to use this for the shadow in the front. So in this area. And as I come around, the shadow gets lighter. So as I come around, the shadow gets lighter. So more red. I'm adding more red. And I'm just going to add a little bit of white. See what happens. Because as we remember, the table is lighter in this area than the pear. I added even more yellow to the mix, and now even a little bit more lighter. It's weird. Now, the edge of the shadow is actually darker. So I'm going like this. There, this is good. Not an easy thing to do. Clean my brush, fix the edge. And now I'm ready to paint the shadow on the wall. Just fix this, okay. Clean the shadow, paint the shadow on the wall. So first I make my peach color, meaning my red orange. So a lot of red with some yellow, the red orange from my palette. So I have my red orange. In this red orange, let me see, where is my painting? So first I made the red orange, this one.
Mhm.
And in this, I'm going to put a little green, just a little green. It'll give me this color, like so. And I use this to paint my shadow, because the wall is pretty light in this area, so it doesn't have to be as dark as what we had on the table. I'm trying to follow the shape of shadow. Shape of the shadow is pretty much like this. And now I'm going to add a little bit of white to this, because what's happening is there's a phantom shadow or ghost shadow that happens here like this. So that's what I'm kind of like adding now. And that's what I'm going to use also to create the shadow of the stem. It's kind of like doubled. So I don't know if you can see this. It's kind of interesting. So this is what I did.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, in the shadow. I mean, now what I would have to do is, you know, make this a little bit of a smoother edge, and maybe clean this up a little bit. But now we have a pretty good pair, and we need the stem. Oh, the stem. Don't forget the stem. So a stem, to do the stem, I'm just going to do a nice purple. So clean my brush.
Ooh, that's clever.
Yeah. So I'm using a lot of the blue, a lot of the red. Gives me a nice deep purple. And using this color, I'm going to add my stem. Here it is. This. Yes, so I have my stem.
That's perfect.
Base of the stem. So what's happening at the base of the stem? There's some light there. So just using a little bit of that peachy color with the white in it. Just gonna add a little bit of this light that's right here. Reflected light. And here. And there is some also on the stem itself. Over here. And then a little bit on the tip. And one thing that we didn't put yet, which is what I'm going to put to finish off, is the reflected light. The reflected light in this case is probably a lot of white and just a teeny little bit of that nice purple. It's actually more of a magenta. So, and the speckle of light has to be put and left alone. So in my case, I'm going to put it right here. Clean my brush. I'm just gonna smear it a little bit. Makes it easy. I'm just
The
making,
whole area is dry now.
yeah, everything is dry around it. Just making this a little bit of a soft edge all the way around. Voila,
Wow, that looks realistic.
it does, doesn't it?
That's pure white.
No, I put magenta and I put the white in the magenta.
Oh, okay.
So if I show a little closer, it
It's got
looks
a little
white,
color to it.
but it's
Yeah.
actually, it's colored. Look at the reflected light here, how interesting it is. It really works well.
It really does.
Yeah, and the reflected light over here, which I used a color here to put on the reflected light. And that's why it looks so real, because the light comes from here and reflects on here.
Very nice.